I would like to discuss you about the way that how we teach for this examination. I'm currently working as a clinical pharmacist. In PBC, they will ask in-depth questions. They will go and ask in-depth. Okay, we have designed the PBC program in such a way that by collaborating with the Canadian pharmacists, so I guess everyone was eagerly waiting to know about what are the opportunities will be there in Canada, and about to know about this PBC examinations, like what are the how many exams that we need to clear in order to become a licensed pharmacist in Canada. So today, guys, we are here to discuss about all these things. So myself, I'm Arief Mohammad. I'm one of the directors of Elite Expertise, and I'm currently working as a clinical pharmacist at Northern Health Hospital in Melbourne, and myself and another we got two other lecturers, pharmacists, who will be teaching the PBC course for the candidates. And at the same time, we all are here to clarify all your doubts related to this PBC examination. So at first, I would like to present a slide, and also I would like to discuss you about the way that how we teach for this examination. So because this PBC examination is one of the, I can say that it is one of the toughest examinations in the world. So the problem is like in PBC, they will ask in-depth questions. They will go and ask in-depth. Okay, so they won't ask straightforward questions in PBC. So that's why the candidates, they need to have a very strong preparation in order to crack this examination. So that's why if our preparation is so strong, then easily we can clear this examination. And at the end, I will you will also have Ms. Sharma here, Mr. Sharma with us. So she's a Canadian pharmacist, and also she will share her own experience as well as her own journey related to the PBC pathway. So as I mentioned, that it is one of the toughest examination. That's why the preparation should remain strong for the PBC. And at Elite Expertise, we are an Australian-based company, but we have designed the PBC program in such a way that by collaborating with the Canadian pharmacists, and we did a lot of research, and then we started this program. So we took around almost like 1 year time to launch this program. So during this 1 year time, we did a lot of research, and then we have introduced this PBC program at Elite Expertise. So today I would like to share a presentation, guys, with you, like how we teach and how simplified that we can learn the PBC cases and so on. Because in PBC, most of the times the examiners, they will ask you about the case scenarios, and they will give the case scenario, and they will ask questions from the cases. Okay? So one of the cases that I have presented, we have shared with you like a couple of days ago. So that's the case that I'm going to present it today. So this is the case scenario that we have shared with you, and I guess you might have gone through this case scenario, and it is quite clear that the patient, who is a 60-year-old male, he has symptoms of shortness of breath, and he has a past smoking history as well. And his current conditions include, he has the hypertension problem, diabetes, rheumatoid arthritis, and COPD. So his COPD was diagnosed in 2022, and since then he had one moderate exacerbation of COPD. And currently he uses only salbutamol puffer for the management of the COPD. And his lung functions right now, at the moment, they are quite normal. And the doctors now, as he started developing the dyspnea, that is shortness of breath issues, so the doctors have decided to optimize his therapy. So let's see how we can optimize the patient's therapy. Because in PBC examination, so it is quite often that you will get such type of the case scenario, and we must try to crack the case. We must try to learn, or we must try to find out what are the key points, or what are the important key information, or the key points from the case, and then we need to analyze it, and then we need to have a look through the options. Okay? So let's see what are the important findings in this case. So the patient presented with shortness of breath. Okay? And this shortness of breath is getting worse when he does some physical activities. So his medical conditions are currently he has hypertension, diabetes, rheumatoid arthritis, and chronic obstructive pulmonary disorder. Okay. His current medications are so and so: amlodipine, metformin, glycoside, methotrexate, folic acid, and salbutamol. So he's on only for salbutamol. So currently he's using just the salbutamol for the management of the COPD. And all the other medications are for different conditions, like amlodipine for blood pressure, metformin, glycoside, they both are for his diabetes, methotrexate and folic acid, both are for rheumatoid arthritis condition. Okay. So, and all his medical conditions are well controlled at the moment. And currently he is suffering only with the shortness of breath issue associated with COPD. Okay. So now, for the management of COPD, actually, there are 4 basic steps which are involved. Okay. So how we need to start with the management of COPD, or how we need to initiate the therapy for a patient who has this COPD problem. So the first step in the management of the COPD is, first step is to start with the salbutamol buffer, that is the short-acting beta agonist. Whenever the patients, they get the shortness of breath problems, so they need to go with the salbutamol buffer. And then in case if they are still getting the dyspnea or the shortness of breath issues, then we need to move on to the step 2. In the step 2, the patients will be using the long-acting anticholinergic buffers or the long-acting beta agonistic buffers. So most of the times we'll go with the long-acting anticholinergic buffers, because long-acting anticholinergic buffers, they have more effective than long-acting beta agonistic buffers. Okay, so LAMA is the second step. Then even by using these long-acting anticholinergic buffers, if still the symptoms continues, then what they need to do? Now we need to move on to the step 3. Step 3 is, to the same long-acting anticholinergic buffer, add long-acting beta agonistic buffer. Okay. So in the step 2, the patient is on long-acting anticholinergic buffer. In the step 3, to the same long-acting anticholinergic buffer, add long-acting beta agonistic buffers like formoterol or salmeterol are the options that are available for long-acting beta agonistics. Okay. And even by using these 2 drug combinations, if still the symptoms persist, then the last option is, we'll keep on adding the inhalational corticosteroids. So add the inhalational corticosteroid to already existing step 3, that is long-acting beta agonists plus long-acting anticholinergic, and then add the inhalational corticosteroid. Okay. So in this way, for the management of the COPD, we go in a stepwise order. So now let's have a look through the examples of these buffers. Okay. So what is meant by this LABA? What is meant by this LAMA? What is meant by this SABA? Okay. So I will show you in this slide. So this is the first buffer that I'm talking about in the step 1. The patients need to use the salbutamol buffer. Okay. Salbutamol only when required basis. So when the symptoms are mild, if the patient has the mild COPD condition, then the patient just need to go with the salbutamol buffer. Okay, on required basis or when required basis. Then step 2, we are starting with the long-acting anticholinergic buffer or long-acting muscarinic antagonist. Okay. So that long-acting muscarinic antagonist or LAMA is tiotropium. Tiotropium is an example for the long-acting anticholinergic buffer with the brand name of Spiriva or Respimat. Okay. Then in step 3, which means that in step 2, the patient will be on tiotropium. But in step 3, to the same tiotropium, to this tiotropium, so we can add long-acting beta agonistic buffer, that is LABA. Examples for long-acting beta agonistic are either we can go with olodanterol or we can go with formoterol. Okay. So when it comes to the step 3, to this tiotropium, we can add the olodanterol. Olodanterol is an example for long-acting beta agonistic buffer. Or we can go with another combination, that is eclidinium, which is anticholinergic, long-acting anticholinergic, or long-acting muscarinic antagonist, that is LAMA, along with another LABA, that is the formoterol. Either you can use this Brivika or you can use this Pebcexamprep. Okay, any one of this combination can be used in step 3. So this is the one for step 1. This buffer is for step 2, and these 2 buffers, either you can select either Pebcexamprep or with the Brivika. They both are for step 3. Even by using this 2 drug combination, if still the patient develops the symptoms, then what we need to do is, at the last option, add inhalational corticosteroid. Okay. So here it is a 3-in-1 combination, that is the Trelegy Ellipta. It has got 3-in-1 in it. One is the umeclidinium, which is a long-acting anticholinergic buffer. Vilanterol, which is a long-acting beta-agonistic buffer, and fluticasone is an inhalational corticosteroid. We always add the inhalational corticosteroid in the management of COPD at the last step. Okay? So these are the 4 examples of the buffers, and in this way that we will move on to each step. Step 1 at salbutamol, step 2 at anticholinergic buffer, step 3 anticholinergic with beta-2 agonistic buffer, and step 4 to this step 3, that is 2-in-1 combination, we are adding another one that and making it to 3-in-1 buffer. Okay. So this is the way that we manage the COPD condition. Okay. But when do we need to start with step 2, or at what stage, or at when do we need to start with step 3? Okay. So let's have a look through all these things. So should I initiate the therapy at step 2 or at step 3, or should I straight away need to go to step 4? Okay. So how we need to decide it? So in order to decide how we need to start the therapy, so let's have a look through this thing. So one of the assessment scores for COPD is known as the CAT score, CAT score, that is COPD assessment test score. And this COPD assessment test score, it ranges from 0 to 40. So we are not discussing all those things at the moment. But if the score is less than 10, then we'll tell it as the patient has mild COPD condition. But if the patient has the score of more than 10, then we'll tell the patient has a moderate to severe COPD condition. For mild COPD condition, the patient will be using only salbutamol buffer, which means that the patient will be at step 1 condition. Okay, if the patient has a mild COPD, then the patient will be at step 1 using only salbutamol buffer. But if the patient has moderate to severe COPD, then we need to decide if the patient with a moderate COPD or moderate to severe COPD is at low risk of acute exacerbations or at a high risk of acute COPD exacerbations. Okay? So whether the patient is at a low risk or if the patient is at a high risk of COPD exacerbations. What do you mean by the COPD exacerbations? So it means that in the future, like in the next upcoming few months or in the next in a few years, whether the patient will get more attacks, okay, or whether the patient is at a low risk of getting the attacks, COPD attacks. Okay. So now let's have a look. How do we classify this acute COPD exacerbations? Okay. So it's quite interesting. So let's have a look here in this slide. We classify the COPD exacerbation as mild, moderate, and severe. Okay. So there are 3 categories. One is the mild, the second one is the moderate, and the third one is severe. Mild means there are no additional therapy is required. There is no additional therapy is required for the patient's COPD management. Let's say, for example, in the last 12 months, so currently we are in the month of November. So since last November 2023 to till now, whether the patient has developed any mild exacerbations, whether the patient had developed any moderate exacerbation, or the patient had developed any severe exacerbation. So what is meant by this mild exacerbation? Mild means the patient, there was no therapy or additional therapy was done to the patient's COPD buffers. Okay? But moderate exacerbation means in the last 12 months, because of this COPD condition, the patient, he visited the doctor's clinic. Okay. So the patient visited the doctor's clinic and the patient has took some oral corticosteroid tablets, that is prednisolone tablet, or the patient also has took some oral antibiotics because of the COPD exacerbation. So whenever the patient they have whether the patient has took the oral antibiotic or whether the patient has took the corticosteroid tablets. If the patient has in the last 12 months, at least once if the patient has took the oral corticosteroid and the oral antibiotic, then we'll tell the patient is at a moderate exacerbation, the risk of moderate exacerbation. Okay. Now, because of this COPD problem, in the last 12 months, at any time, whether the patient has got hospitalized, okay, because of shortness of breath or any other severe acute exacerbation, whether the patient has got hospitalized, okay, or the patient has admitted in the emergency department, okay, then we'll tell that the patient is at a severe exacerbation. Okay, so mild means no therapy was done. Moderate means at least once the patient took the antibiotic or oral corticosteroids. And then severe patient means the patient has admitted in the hospital or in the emergency department. Now, let's apply these three concepts. So these are the basic things that we need to know. Okay, so now let's apply in a stepwise manner and let's see how we'll come to our conclusion.